Life is absurd, but we shouldn't give up on it. Albert Camus, there is a silent revolt in every human being, a rebellion against the absurdity of existence, personified in the myth of Sisyphus, eternally condemned to push a boulder up a mountain, only to have it roll back down. This is the human condition in its rawest essence. Sisyphus represents each of us. Their never-ending struggle mirrors our own daily battle against the seeming void of meaning. Friedrich Nietzsche proclaimed the death of God, leaving us orphans in an indifferent universe. Jean-Paul Sartre asserted that we are condemned to freedom, forced to create meaning in a world without inherent purpose. But it is precisely in this abyss of absurdity that we find our greatest strength. Albert Camus, in his wisdom, saw in the revolt against the absurd the very affirmation of life. It is not the absence of meaning that defines us, but our persistent search for it. Reflect. How many times have you felt like Sisyphus, fighting against seemingly implacable forces? This fight is not futile. It is the core of the human experience. The absurdity of existence manifests itself in countless ways. In the daily routine that seems devoid of meaning, in relationships that wear out, in ambitions that, once achieved, turn out to be empty. It is an echo of the existential void that Viktor Frankl identified as the neurosis of our era. But it is precisely in this void that our opportunity for transcendence lies. As Carl Jung taught, it is in the confrontation with the shadow, that which we deny in ourselves, that we find the path to individuation. Absurdity is not our enemy, but the battlefield where we forge our character. The human revolt against the absurd is not a denial of life, but its deepest affirmation. It is the no that says yes to existence in all its aspects, even the most painful. Nietzsche called this amor fati, the love of destiny, the joyful acceptance of all that life offers us. Now, let's dive deeper into this journey of self-discovery and revolt against the absurd. Imagine waking up on an ordinary morning. The alarm clock goes off, and you ask yourself, why am I doing this again? This seemingly banal moment is the beginning of his daily revolt against the absurd. The philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke about the concept of being released to Werfenheit. We are born into a world we did not choose, with circumstances we do not control. This feeling of being thrown into the world can be overwhelming. It's as if we were actors in a play for which we didn't know the script. Yet it is precisely in this state of disorientation that we have the opportunity to create meaning. The existentialist Sartre would say that we are condemned to be free. This freedom can be terrifying, but it is also our greatest gift. Every choice we make, from the moment we decide to get out of bed, is an act of meaning creation. Consider the frenetic pace of modern life, the constant bombardment of information, social pressures, professional expectations. All of this can contribute to a feeling of alienation, which sociologist Emil Durkheim called anomie. We are connected like never before, but paradoxically, many feel more alone than ever. This existential loneliness, however, is not necessarily negative. Philosopher Paul Tillich spoke of the courage to be, the ability to face existential anxiety and still affirm life. It is in the silence of solitude that we often find our most authentic voice. Think about how many times you found yourself doing something simply because that's the way things are done. How many times have you followed a predetermined path without question? Philosopher Simone de Beauvoir reminds us that freedom is the only method for achieving being. Questioning social norms, imposed expectations, is an act of revolt against the absurd. But how does this manifest itself in everyday life? Imagine a successful executive who, at the height of his career, feels an inexplicable emptiness. He has achieved everything society says he should aim for, but he still feels like something is missing. This is absurdity in action. The realization that even our greatest achievements can feel hollow if they are not aligned with our deepest being. Or think of an artist struggling to express a vision that no one else seems to understand. The frustration, the doubt, the constant questioning about the value of your work. This is also a way of confronting the absurd. As Camus said, to create is to live twice. Art, in all its forms, is one of the most powerful ways to make sense of the seemingly meaningless. Jung's analytical psychology offers us valuable tools for navigating this existential terrain. The concept of individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, is fundamental. Jung argued that many of our internal conflicts arise when we neglect important aspects of our psyche. Consider the shadow archetype. They are those aspects of ourselves that we repress, that we refuse to recognize. It could be our anger, our unacceptable desires, our insecurities. The more we deny these parts of ourselves, the more power they gain over us. Shadow integration. Looking honestly at these denied parts is an act of courage and a profound form of revolt against the absurd. In practice, this can mean uncomfortable moments of self-reflection. You may find yourself reacting disproportionately to a seemingly trivial situation. Instead of ignoring this reaction, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what's really bothering me here? This pause, this questioning, is the beginning of a profound journey of self-knowledge. Contemporary philosopher Byung-Chul Han talks about the fatigue society. We live in an era of hyperactivity, where constant doing is valued above being. This culture of perpetual performance can distance us from ourselves, increasing the sense of absurdity. The real revolt in this context may be simply stopping, breathe, be present. But how do we cultivate this presence in a world that seems to conspire against it? Here, the contemplative traditions of the East offer valuable insights. The practice of mindfulness meditation, for example, is not an escape from reality, but a deep dive into it. By observing our thoughts and sensations without judgment, we begin to see through the illusions that often imprison us. Imagine sitting in silence for a few minutes every day. At first, it may seem unbearable. Your mind wanders, you feel restless, but little by little, you start to notice patterns. The way certain thoughts come and go, how sensations in the body change. This simple but profound observation is a form of revolt against the constant flow of external stimuli that often distracts us from our internal experience. Indian philosopher and mystic Jiddu Krishnamurti said, "Observing without evaluating is the highest form of human intelligence." This pure, non-judgmental observation allows us to see reality as it is, not as we think it should be. It is an act of radical acceptance that, paradoxically, paves the way for profound change. But the revolt against the absurd is not limited to introspection. It also manifests itself in our relationships with others and the world. Martin Buber spoke of the I-thou relationship, a genuine encounter where we recognize the otherness of the other. In an increasingly polarized world, where we often reduce others to caricatures, the simple act of truly seeing each other is revolutionary. Think about a recent conflict you had, maybe with a coworker, a family member, or even a stranger on the street. Now, imagine yourself pausing before reacting, taking a deep breath and asking yourself, what is this person really trying to communicate? What are they feeling? This simple act of empathy can completely transform the dynamics of an interaction. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and founder of logotherapy, reminds us that even in the most dire circumstances, we have the freedom to choose our attitude. He observed that in the concentration camps, those who maintained a sense of purpose, even if it was simply living to tell their story, had a greater chance of surviving. This search for purpose doesn't have to be grand. It can be found in the simplest everyday gestures. The gardener who cultivates his plants with love, the teacher who inspires his students, the friend who offers a listening ear. Every act of care and attention is an affirmation of life in the face of absurdity. Contemporary philosopher Alain de Botton suggests that one of the greatest sources of suffering in our society is the disparity between our expectations and reality. We are bombarded with images of perfect lives, instantly successful careers, idealized relationships. When our reality inevitably diverges from these ideals, we feel like we have failed in some way. The revolt against the absurd in this context, can mean a radical readjustment of our expectations, not in the sense of lowering our standards, but of realigning them with what is truly meaningful to us. Ask yourself, what really matters to me? What do I value? Not because I've been told I should, but because it resonates deeply with my being. This questioning can lead to dramatic changes in our lives. Maybe you realize that the career you've worked so hard for isn't aligned with your deepest values, or that the relationship you maintain out of convenience is stifling your growth. Recognizing this can be painful, but it is the first step towards a more authentic life. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard spoke about the leaps of faith we are called to take throughout our lives. It's not about religious faith necessarily, but about the courage to embrace uncertainty, of taking a step into the unknown, knowing that there are no guarantees, but that the alternative, remaining stagnant in a life that no longer serves us, is a form of living death. Consider moments of transition in your life, changing careers, ending a relationship, moving to a new city. These moments are fraught with anxiety precisely because they confront us with the absurdity of existence. There is no guaranteed roadmap, no manual that tells us exactly what to do. It is in these moments that we are called to create our own meaning. But how do we navigate these turbulent waters? Here, contemplative practices again offer valuable insights. The Buddhist tradition, for example, talks about the concept of non-self, anatta. The idea that there is no fixed, unchanging self, but a constant flow of experiences. Accepting this impermanence can be liberating. It means we are not tied to a fixed identity, that we can reinvent ourselves, evolve, grow. Every moment becomes an opportunity for choice, for creating meaning. In practice, this can manifest itself as greater openness to change. Imagine facing a challenge that seems insurmountable. Instead of rigidly clinging to a specific solution or identity, you allow yourself to explore different approaches. You ask yourself, who do I need to be to face this challenge? What internal resources can I access? Psychologist and philosopher William James spoke about the will to believe, the idea that at certain times, the act of believing in something can actually make it true. It's not about magical thinking, but about recognizing the power of our beliefs in shaping our reality. If we believe that life is meaningless, we will likely find evidence to support that belief. If, on the other hand, we choose to believe that there is meaning to be discovered and created, we begin to see opportunities where we previously saw only obstacles. This choice of perspective is a powerful form of revolt against the absurd. It's saying yes to life, even when it seems to be saying no to us. It's finding beauty in chaos, meaning in struggle. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke advised, live the questions now. Perhaps then you will gradually, without realizing it, live someday distant in the answer. This approach of living the questions is a profound form of engagement with the absurdity of existence. Instead of seeking definitive answers, we can cultivate an attitude of curiosity and openness. Every challenge, every moment of doubt or confusion becomes an opportunity for exploration. What can I learn here? How can I grow through this? This attitude of curiosity can transform even the most mundane experiences. Boredom, for example, often seen as something to be avoided at all costs, can become a gateway to creativity. When we allow ourselves to feel the discomfort of boredom without immediately seeking distraction, we often discover surprising insights. Philosopher Bertrand Russell argued that boredom plays an important role in the development of imagination. When we are not constantly stimulated by external sources, we are forced to look within to explore the recesses of our own mind. Think about how many great ideas have come from moments of apparent inactivity. Isaac Newton developed his theories about gravity during a period of forced isolation due to the plague. Einstein conceived the theory of relativity largely during long solitary walks. Of course, not all of us will be Newtons or Einsteins, but each of us has the ability to transform moments of apparent emptiness into opportunities for growth and creativity. The next time you feel bored, instead of immediately seeking distraction, try staying with that feeling. Watch it. What do you notice? What thoughts arise? What impulses do you feel? This simple practice can be a powerful form of self-knowledge and, by extension, revolt against the absurd. Eastern philosophy, particularly Taoism, offers valuable insights into how to navigate the seeming chaos of existence. The concept of wu-wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action, is not a call for passivity, but for a different kind of engagement with the world. Imagine a river flowing around rocks. Water does not fight obstacles. It simply goes around them, finding the path of least resistance. Likewise, we can learn to flow with life circumstances rather than constantly fighting them. This does not mean passively accepting everything that happens to us. On the contrary, it is a more subtle and effective form of engagement. It's recognizing when our efforts are working against ourselves and when they are aligned with the natural flow of things. In practice, this can manifest as greater attention to the natural rhythms of our energy and creativity. Instead of forcing yourself to be productive when your body and mind ask for rest, you learn to work with your natural cycles. You recognize that periods of apparent inactivity are as important as periods of intense productivity. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi has extensively studied the concept of flow, a state of complete immersion and engagement in an activity. He found that people are happier and more fulfilled when they are in the state of flow, regardless of the specific activity. Finding and cultivating these moments of flow can be a powerful way to give meaning to our existence. It can be through a hobby, a job that challenges us in a positive way, or even everyday tasks when approached with full attention. Consider an activity that you really love doing. Maybe it's cooking, painting, programming, or playing a sport. When you are completely immersed in this activity, time seems to disappear. You feel completely present, connected to something bigger than yourself. These moments are glimpses of transcendence amidst the absurdity of existence. But what about moments of deep suffering? How do we find meaning when faced with loss, pain, or tragedy? Here again, Viktor Frankl offers valuable insights. He argued that even in suffering, we have the freedom to choose our attitude. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. Imagine someone facing a terminal illness. The situation itself is tragic, absurd in its apparent meaninglessness. But even in these circumstances, there are choices to be made. How does this person spend their remaining days? What legacy does she choose to leave? What qualities does she cultivate in the face of adversity? Writer and philosopher Albert Camus, in his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, argues that we should imagine Sisyphus happy, not because his task is easy or enjoyable, but because he has fully embraced it. He found meaning in the struggle itself. Likewise, we can find meaning not despite our struggles, but through them. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for growth, every obstacle a chance to develop resilience and wisdom. Contemporary philosopher Slavoj Zizek talks about the importance of loving the symptom, not in the sense of clinging to suffering, but in recognizing that our difficulties and challenges are an integral part of who we are. They shape us, define us, offer us unique opportunities for growth. Think about a difficult time in your life, something that, at the time, seemed unbearable. Now, looking back, can you see how this experience changed you? How has she made him stronger, wiser, more compassionate? This perspective does not diminish the real suffering we experience, but it offers a way to integrate it into our life narrative in a way that strengthens us rather than diminishes us. Psychologist and researcher Breen Brown talks extensively about the importance of vulnerability. Paradoxically, it is when we allow ourselves to be truly vulnerable that we feel most alive, most connected, most authentic. Being vulnerable is risky. It means opening yourself up to the possibility of pain, rejection, failure. But it's also the only way to experience deep love, genuine connection, authentic fulfillment. It is a form of revolt against the absurd because it is a courageous affirmation of our humanity in all its fragility and strength. In practice, this may mean having difficult conversations that you have been avoiding, express feelings that you have been keeping bottled up, pursue a dream that you are afraid of failing, Each act of vulnerability is a step toward a more authentic and meaningful life. Philosopher Martin Heidegger talked about the concept of authenticity. For him, living authentically meant embracing our finitude, our mortality, and making choices based on our deepest values, not society's expectations. This takes us back to the idea of Sisyphus. Each day, he faces his impossible task. Each day, he chooses to continue, not because he expected a different outcome, but because he found meaning in the very act of persisting. Likewise, our revolt against the absurd is not a fight we hope to win in any ultimate sense. It is an ongoing commitment to life, to the creation of meaning, to the search for authenticity. Ultimately, revolt against absurdity is an act of love. Love for life in all its complexities and contradictions. Love for ourselves in all our imperfection. Love for others in all their otherness. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke said, be patient with everything that is unresolved in your heart. Live in the questions now. Perhaps then you will gradually, without realizing it, live someday distant in the answer. On this journey of self-discovery and meaning-making, there is no final destination. Every day is a new opportunity to choose, to create, to love. Every moment is a chance to say yes to life, even, and perhaps especially, when it seems absurd. So when you feel like Sisyphus, pushing your boulder up the mountain, remember, you are not alone. We are all on this journey together. And it is precisely in this shared struggle that we find our common humanity, our deepest connection. The revolt against the absurd is not a denial of reality, but a fuller embrace of it. It's recognizing the vastness of the universe, the inevitability of death, the uncertainty of the future, and still choosing to live with passion, purpose, and presence. It's looking into the abyss of absurdity and, instead of despair, finding inspiration. It is transforming chaos into creativity, suffering into wisdom, fear into courage. Always remember, you are the author of your own story. Every choice you make, every action you take, is a thread in this ever-evolving narrative. Make these choices a powerful affirmation of who you are and what you value. And so, like Sisyphus, we continue our journey, not because we hope to reach a final destination, but because we find beauty, meaning, and purpose in the journey itself. Because, in the end, it is the journey that defines us, that shapes us, that makes us truly human. So get up, face your day, push your boulder up the mountain with a smile on your face and fire in your heart. Because it is in this struggle, in this revolt against the absurd, that you will find your deepest strength, your truest joy, your most authentic being. And always remember the words of Camus. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. We must imagine Sisyphus happy, and